The Culture Pop Podcast is brought to you by the law offices of Jacob Emrani.
Accident or injury, call Jacob Emrani. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mase. If you or a friend or loved one is injured in an accident, the first person you should call is my friend Jacob. When I did this, Jacob was great. He helped me by talking through the next steps, which really put my mind at ease. When you're injured in an accident, you got to have an expert. That's why you call Jacob, just like I did. Call Jacob, 844-24-JACOB. That's 844-24-JACOB, or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Culture Pop Podcast. I'm Steve Mason, along with Sue Kalinsky. Sue Ballou, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So how's the uke practice going? You're playing the uke now.
I was just practicing just before.
No, were you really?
I practice every day.
You're getting good at the ukulele?
Well, I've learned, I have to look at the music a little bit. The only song I could play without looking at any chords is You Are My Sunshine.
You Are My Sunshine. Well, that's very nice.
And I've learned, and I have to look at the chords, but can't help falling in love with you. The Elvis song.
I Can't Help Falling in Love with You on the uke.
On the uke, and now I'm working on Bob Dylan's Blowing in the Wind.
Nice. Now, do you and Tom, your husband, play uke together? Do you do like a little duet sort of situation?
He actually said to me the other day, I brought the ukulele into the living room.
Yeah.
And sometimes he plays in the living room.
Okay.
And I don't care if I'm doing something in the living room or in the kitchen.
Right.
I kind of like it. He said to me, this is a no ukulele zone from now on. So if we want to play, we have to go in either of our offices or in the travel trailer.
Now, so are you going to do like dueling ukes at some point?
We could.
That'd
I think at some point we'll probably go on the road.
Are you going to set up on Santa Monica on the promenade with a little hat out in front and you're playing?
I should. I haven't been working. It would come in handy.
You know, the good uke song is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Like Is. Do you know that version? I
don't.
Oh, God, you got to look that up. It's all uke.
Oh.
Yeah, it's by a guy named Is. I forget the whole name, but if you search IZ, it'll come up. And his version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, awesome. He blends it with What a Wonderful World.
Oh,
so the two songs go together. It's really, really cool. Hey, what do you think of my hoodie? It's not a hoodie. It's kind of a quarter zip.
It's really nice. And I actually wanted to take a picture of this guy, but it would have been weird because then he would be like, why are you taking my picture? I was at the driving range the other day.
Yeah.
And I was walking to my car and there's a cafe there. So people were sitting outside and this guy was wearing one of the shirts that you wear all the time.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You know, they're from Sunday Swagger, sundayswagger.com. They're my official clothing provider.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, sure. That's what it is. All right. So I wanted to, we got a great guest coming up, Brian Helgeland, who, of course, won the Oscar for LA Confidential. He's got a brand new movie called Finest Kind. We'll talk to him about that. Sue, this is something you probably don't know about me. I was once buried alive.
You did it for a radio promotion, right?
I did. Have we talked about it?
I don't know if we talked about it on our show, but you've talked to me about it. And was it to raise money for something?
Yeah, it was to raise money for the Toledo Public Schools back in the day. So I came across this guy named Mr. Beast. Do you know Mr. Beast?
Mm-mm.
He's the single most followed person on YouTube.
Wow.
And he was buried alive for a week and had 57 million views. He says it caused him mental agony, which I'm not surprised by. By the way, this guy earns $3 to $5 million a month in ad revenue on his YouTube account. Is that crazy?
Because he buried himself alive? Or
this is one of the things.
This is one of his shtick things.
He's always got a bit. Like there was another one. Where's the other bit?
Is it always like danger?
It's danger, but sometimes it's really nice stuff. Sometimes he does really nice stuff, although he does stupid stuff. Like apparently he once counted from 1 to 100,000 on his YouTube channel and got a ton of views.
How long did it take him to do that?
I have no idea, but how could it possibly be interesting? 1, 2, 3, see ya at 100,000.
I've heard of people saying they could read the phone book and I'd be interested, but listening to someone count?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So when I was buried alive, I'll lay it out for you. He was buried alive for a week. I was buried alive for 48 hours. So here's how it worked. For 48 hours before I got buried, no food and no drink. So
BB?
Exactly. Before burial. So by the time I get to burial, I haven't eaten or drank anything in 2 days. So they put me in the ground, just like a regular coffin. They dug a hole.
Throw dirt on you?
Had a coffin, had dirt thrown on me. There was like an air tube that went up to the surface, and you could actually look down at me. There was also a camera inside the coffin. So when people came to the event, the burial, the buried alive thing, they could actually watch me on a camera inside the coffin. I did my show from inside the coffin. I was doing mornings at that point. I did 2 morning shows from inside the coffin.
Did you sleep at all?
The only way I slept was on the last night. I said, you know what? I'm not going to make it. I am not going to make it. You're either going to have to dig me up or drop a bottle of NyQuil down here. And so
but you were monitored the whole time.
Oh,
right?
yeah. No, people were making sure. But I was like, it was up to me. If I wanted to come up,
it was up to you if you wanted to stop it. Okay.
So I said, send me a bottle of NyQuil. So they send a bottle of NyQuil. I chugged the entire thing. I slept all night. That's what got me through. NyQuil will knock you out like crazy. And I survived it. And when they dug me up, there were 1,000 people there. And it was a really cool event. And I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I wouldn't do it again. I can't imagine doing it for a week.
I'm so claustrophobic. I could never do it.
Yeah, it's insane.
I went into a deprivation tank once.
Where you float in the water?
Where you float in the water. It's like a coffin. It's like a tanning bed with water.
Right. And the water is exactly 98.6 degrees. So you feel like you're floating in the middle of nowhere.
You feel like you're floating. And I did it when I was living in New York before I had moved out here. And the thing, it's unbelievable. I mean, there really is a sense of calm. They're monitoring you. At some point, I definitely dozed off. But the thing is that I did it in the city. Right. So you walk out, you're feeling so calm, everything's lovely, and then you walk out and it's like, hey, asshole,
Wham! The city hits you.
You hear cars honking, fire engines, people yelling
all
at
that
each
zen.
other. Completely erased all the zen.
Yeah. God, I've done that. It's really, it does feel like you're just sort of floating in, because there's salt in the water. So, and you can't really tell you're in. It's an interesting experience. Interesting. All right. So I don't know if you heard this or not, Sue, but Snoop gave up smoke. Do you know this story?
All right. So I posted something on Facebook when it first came out, and I said, what is the world coming to? Snoop is not going to be smoking weed anymore.
Yes.
And then I saw that it was just a ruse for a fire pit company.
A fire pit company, called Solo Stove. Now I am going to get one of these things. I think the product is really cool, but I thought it was a genius marketing thing because the original post where he said, I'm giving up smoke, he said, please respect my privacy during this difficult time. And I'm like, oh, God, he really is quitting.
Yeah.
And instead, he comes out with this smoke-free Solo Stove, which is like a home fire pit. I told our sales department, go sign these guys up. I will advertise, endorse. I mean, it's a killer deal, but I thought a great piece of marketing.
Oh, absolutely. Do you remember years ago, he tried to convince Cadillac to come up with a new model Cadillac called Snoop DeVille?
No, really?
Yes.
Snoop DeVille. Well, some of this stuff works. So this is the Snoop fire pit. Mm-hmm. He's got the Snoop Skechers now.
Right.
Have you seen those?
No.
Oh yeah, they're Snoop designed Skechers.
What meaning? What? Oh, what do they look like?
They've got his little logo on them. His little pot weed, whatever that thing is.
He's got his weed logo.
His weed logo. So if you want to walk around with...
You probably don't run very fast.
Probably takes your time. Probably just flop on the couch. Put on my Skechers and go to sleep. I've been thinking, by the way, since this is a podcast and I can say whatever I want, I've been thinking about giving up smoking.
Oh. And for health reasons, like your throat and stuff, or the high. You don't want the high.
Oh no, I definitely want the high. I definitely want that part of it. What I don't want is the inhaling and that burning sensation and all that.
I have to get you one of those little bubblers, the water pipe, the portable water pipe.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'll mail it to you.
Oh yeah, mail it to me.
Because I turned a lot of people onto it, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, thanks so much!" Because there's water, so you're not getting water in your mouth.
It's smoother.
It's much smoother, and you're not coughing.
Oh, that's nice. Is it a bong? It's like a mini bong?
It's a mini bong. It's like this big.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely try that.
Oh, I should.
Because otherwise, I'm going to go straight up edibles.
Yeah, I don't know about the edible. And you know what? I'm really this is a lesson learned. Okay. I think I told you I went to the Improv 60th anniversary.
Yes.
Okay. Did I told you that I got very stoned when I was there?
No, God, no.
So, pot these days is so potent.
Yes.
And I always sound like the old timer, but I remember, when I was a kid and I smoked pot, I could smoke an entire joint by myself and I'd be fine.
Yeah, been there.
And the pot was good. It just wasn't as strong as it is now. It's like one hit. If you dare to take two, forget about it. So I'm at this party. It's at the Improv. Yep. It's like indoor, outdoor. I'm mostly in the outdoor section. Yeah. And someone had a joint and I took a couple of hits and like 10 minutes later, I was so high.
Really?
Like scary high. Like it was really, really not fun. And I was designated driver with Tom.
Oh my God, you're designated driver?
Yeah, and when we left, I said, I don't think I could drive. And he had a couple of drinks, so he didn't want to drive. And he said, you got to be kidding me. And I thought we were going to get into like a big fight about it.
Yeah.
Because, I'm designated driver, but I've never just taken a couple of hits of pot and not been able to drive.
Yeah, right.
So I said, all right, well, I'll get in the car and I'll sit in the driver's seat and I'll drink some water.
Oh,
and
God.
if I could drive, I'll drive. And I looked at him and I said, there's no way I could drive.
Really?
So he had and he was fine.
Yeah, he was okay?
Yeah. So last night, I'm at someone's house and I took a couple of hits, not as strong as this other pot, but it was really strong. And then a friend of mine was telling me he read that some weed is laced with fentanyl.
Well, really?
Yes.
No.
Now, I would think at dispensaries, most of these dispensaries have a grow operation.
Yes, they do.
In the place.
Right. And a lot of these are really, to go into it, a lot of these are really reliable brands. Like the Wild brand is really good. The Camino brand is really good. There are things that you could try, but the fentanyl thing is scary as hell.
That's really, really scary.
Because people are dying when they do a snort a blow because there's fentanyl in it.
Right. So I'm just not going to smoke anybody else's weed because a lot of people smoke sativa. I don't like sativa.
I don't like sativa either.
It's too uppity. I like the indica. Indica, it gives me a great high. I laugh just as much or more because I'm not paranoid. And sometimes I'll take a couple of hits before I go to bed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's nice. The smoking thing, the problem with edibles is you eat one and then you wait. Yeah. And you're like, I don't want to eat another one till I know this one has hit.
Right.
And sometimes you misjudge it and you take the other one and then you're like, bam, slammed.
Too much.
It's very, very complicated.
All right. Well, I'm going to buy you the bubbler.
Okay. Yeah. I definitely want a bubbler.
Okay.
All of that in advance of our guest. I'm sure. Very interesting.
I wonder if he has he may have a bubbler. You know,
he may. Our guest today has written movies like Clint Eastwood's Mystic River, Man on Fire, starring Denzel Washington and Heath Ledger in A Knight's Tale. He won the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay for the film noir classic L.A. Confidential. Since then, he's written and directed the Jackie Robinson biopic 42 and Legend, starring Tom Hardy. His latest film is called Finest Kind, starring Ben Foster, Toby Wallace, Jenna Ortega, and Tommy Lee Jones. It will make its premiere on Paramount Plus starting December the 15th. Brian Helgeland joins us. Brian, thanks a lot for coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
So congratulations on the movie. I loved it. Great cast, Ben Foster, Toby Wallace. And you take us into this world, which I guess is your hometown in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Describe sort of how this fits into your life. Who are you in the story? Tell us about sort of the origins.
Yeah, I grew up in that town, went to high school there, and went to the same high school Jenna Ortega references in the movie. And my dad, it's a commercial, it's set in the backdrop is commercial fishing. And my grandfather was a commercial fisherman. My uncles, my dad, he had a issue with his back and he had to move on from doing that. But when I was a kid, my earliest memory is dropping my dad off at the dock, see you in a week. And that was all the stories around the house were all fishing stories and storms and barroom fights that my great uncle had. And when I got out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, not even close. And I didn't want to break the streak since Helgelands had been to sea for a couple of 100 years. So I went fishing and I fished for a year and a half before I ended up going to film school. And this was one of the first scripts I ever wrote. When I wrote it when I was 28. And directed it when I was 60. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Because I read that so the movie had a different cast originally. What was that in 2018 was that?
Yeah. Well, it's had different casts. Let me put it this way: the first person attached to play a part in it was Heath Ledger.
Wow.
Oh wow.
So that's how long it's been around. So it's had different incarnations and just it basically it just couldn't get put together for one reason or another until this incarnation now.
So were there a few rewrites over the years to get to this place, or did you pretty much keep it the way you originally?
I pretty much kept it the way it was. And it's fishing boats that have never really, everything they do is still the same as they did it back in when I wrote the script and when I fished. So nothing really needs to be updated, and the relationships are all father and son and brothers and things like that. So nothing really had to. They weren't tech guys, so I didn't have to rewrite it.
I just want to ask you a question. Do you fish today? Are you a fishing guy? Or are you done? Like even for fun?
No, I'm not. No, I don't understand recreational fishing because if it's not coming in hundreds of pounds at a time, I don't understand the point of it. So if you're not making money and you're hauling around bags of it, it doesn't make sense to me.
I want to share with you real quick a story. I go down to Florida a lot. My husband's in-laws live there, and one of my brother-in-law's, his brother-in-law, he has a big fishing boat, and they invited me to come for the day. And
right.
And none of the wives were going on the boat, and I kind of seemed a little odd. I was like, oh, okay, maybe they're not interested. And like, I like being on the water. So
right.
I'm on the boat. And I see a little baseball bat, like a little wooden bat. And I'm a huge baseball fan, right? And I just had mentioned, oh, that's so cute, the little bat. It's so cute, And they were I guess they were it wasn't sailfish. It's oh god, what's the it has like
marlin?
It was a fish that had like
swordfish.
Swordfish. It was swordfish.
Okay.
So they all of a sudden, like, they're going crazy. They're reeling it in. And as it comes on the boat, they take that baseball bat and start pounding and beating it until it dies, right?
Right.
And I'm like, I'm on the boat, and I'm just like, thought I was there for like this nice like day out on the ocean, And I just looked at him. I was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I feel like I'm like fishing with the mob. This is insane. What are you doing?" And
Right.
They said that they do it because the sword will rip up the boat.
Right, it thrashes around. And,
Sure.
It was horrific. And I've never ever have anything to do with fishing ever since, or ate swordfish.
See, now I grew up fishing. My family grew up fishing. We fished for salmon. We fished for perch in Lake Erie. We dipped for smelt. Do you ever hear of that, dipping for smelt, where you get those little fish with a net? All that kind of stuff. I'm wondering though, what was the average day like when you were actually at sea?
Well, it's deep sea. I was a scallop fisherman, which sounds like you're walking along the shore looking for scallops that have washed up, but it's deep sea scallops, and it can be 100 miles offshore, and you're out there for 10 days at a time. And a typical day, you work in a double shift of 6 hours on and 6 hours off. So you get up at 6 a.m. and work till noon, then sleep, then get up at 6 p.m. and work till midnight, or the midnight to 6. So it's the strange, you sleep twice a day, and once you get into that rhythm, it's kind of cool. But you work so hard that you just eat like a maniac and don't gain an ounce. But we're probably eating 10,000 calories a day.
Wow. And
all you do is work and eat and sleep. So.
And were you like the Toby Wallace character? Were you like college boy? I think I'll go fish.
Yeah, I was. I graduated with an English degree. I couldn't get a job, and when I went fishing, I just was down on the docks, going from one boat to the next, asking, if they needed anybody, and just getting a lot of head shakes and get lost and that kind of worse. And then finally, I got on a boat, and I desperately didn't want anyone to know that I'd gone to college, but I wasn't going to lie. So, you very quickly get referred to as college boy and all that. Not bad for a college boy. And okay, we didn't think a college boy could do this. And
God, you captured so much of that in the movie. So much of that is like dead on the money with what you're describing right now.
Yeah. So that part of the Toby Wallace character is from that experience. But by the same token, the Jenna Ortega character, Mabel, is me in a sense also, as far as growing up in that town and sensing that there's a bigger world out there. Because I actually went to college locally also. I went to the local state school, and knowing there's a bigger world out there and wanting to figure out how to reach it somehow, but having no sense of how to do it, and really very few role models of how to do it. So I kind of put myself into both those characters.
So I get seasick badly. Did you ever get seasick?
Yeah, I got. I didn't get seasick until, I don't know how graphic you want to hear a story, but I didn't get seasick till about 6 months I had been fishing. And I was very proud. I had never been seasick. And one trip I had to go cook. And I got up. It was on the way out, so everyone on the boat was asleep. And I got up at 3:30 in the morning, and I had to start making bacon. And we had this like a huge industrial pan covered in 8 packs of bacon for everybody. And I felt a little strange, and I went out on deck and felt better. And I had to flip the bacon over, and I came in and opened the oven, and the bacon smell hit me. And I basically I threw up in my mouth, but I kept my mouth closed because I have to clean it, right? And I run out on deck, and I'm on deck on my hands and knees, just heaving my guts out. And I hear, and the deck's washed with water and everything, and I'm finally just like panting, and like I've completely emptied my stomach, and stuff's hanging from my face, and I hear this sound, and I look up, and the captain is in his underwear watching me as he pees on deck. And I look up at him, and he looks down at me, and he says, "What's for breakfast?" And I said, "Blueberry pancakes." And he said, "Finest kind." And he went and disappeared up the ladder to the wheelhouse.
I'm glad you met. So finest kind, that term is a little, it made me think of like Donnie Brasco, like forget about it. It can mean a bunch of different things. Finest kind can mean a bunch of different things. Explain that.
Well, in that case, it was, that's as much sympathy as I was going to get. It was like, okay, you're okay if you're still cooking. But finest kind can mean it's strictly a nautical, kind of a fishing term or a nautical term, but it can mean anything. It's like the guy says in the movie, it's the Swiss Army knife of words. It can be go to hell. It can be get lost. It can be that's great. It can mean suit yourself. It's all in the attitude and the context that someone says it. So it can mean anything really, good, bad, or indifferent. I heard it a lot growing up, and but never really quite understood what it meant till I started fishing, and then it became more apparent. But it's a mystery word in a way.
So the movie is taken from your life. Is there anything else in the film that's from your life?
Well,
I know we don't want to give away stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I put a lot of all the guys in the crew in the movie are based on guys that I fished with, and they're not even composites. They're the guy who's Costa was a guy named Costa who I just wrote him, and but there's some Tommy Lee Jones talks about his he has cancer in the movie, and his line about his cancer, he thought he had an ulcer, and he said, I found out it was stomach cancer, and he said, I guess I can stop eating those Tums. And I had an uncle named Chris, and that's what my Uncle Chris said when he found out he had stomach cancer. He said, I can stop eating Tums, I guess.
Yeah.
Save some. Yeah. And there's a scene in a donut shop, and Tommy Lee has a line in that scene, which is the last thing my dad ever said to me before he died, which is, he says, there's a man outside waiting for us, and he's pretty rough. And that's the last thing my dad said to me.
Wow.
So there's things like that. But just the experience of Toby Wallace entering this world and trying to figure it out and find his place in it, and being charged up about it in a way. It's feeling like he's on an adventure, and that's how I felt when I fished.
So I want to ask about some of your other work, if that's cool.
Yeah.
So LA Confidential, absolute classic. So my favorite movie of all time has always been Chinatown, and LA Confidential is the very next best thing. So you adapted the James Ellroy novel. How much is in the book and how much comes from your head?
It's interesting because that book is something like 600 pages long. And to give us some context, there's not one serial killer in that book. There's 2 serial killers in that book. And there's none in the movie. So it was stripping away stuff, but always staying true to those characters, always staying true to Ellroy's characters. The 3 main cops. And you had to change stuff, and you had to do things just to wrangle it and get it into shape to make a movie out of it, because a movie is a completely different beast and structure. But the goal was to always stay true to who those guys were in the book. And generally, if you do that, you can stay true to the book and the thematics of the book and still have a lot of leeway to change things. It's when you start to change who they are in the movie from who they were in the book. So, yeah, and it was a lot of work and some invention and some bridges and things like that. But that was the thrust behind it.
When you're adapting a book, do you develop a relationship with the author? I mean, did you hang out with James Ellroy and talk to him about what you were doing, and he was on board and all of that? I mean,
yeah, not as I was working. The odd thing was I was a big fan of his, and he had a book out. It was The Big Nowhere, which is a great book. It would make a great movie if anyone ever did it. And he had a book signing on Hollywood Boulevard at a bookstore. And I had never been to a book signing, and I had never asked anyone for their autograph. But I was enamored with his writing, and I went, and there were 3 people there at this thing. And he signed the first 2 books, and the place is empty. And then he signed mine, and I started talking to him about Blood on the Moon, the book that was based on his book, Suicide Hill, I think. No, it was called Cop with James Woods, and it was based on Blood on the Moon. He didn't like it very much, and I didn't either. And we talked about that. And this was before he wrote LA Confidential. So I had met him, and it was kind of that thing of like, I was just starting out, and I wanted to see what a real writer looked like. And I knew I didn't look like him. I didn't look like a real writer, but he looked like a real writer, talked like one. And then when LA Confidential got picked up by Warner Brothers to make a movie out of it, I desperately wanted that job and eventually got it along with Curtis Hanson, the director. And when we were done with it, we sent it to Ellroy, and we had dinner with him at the Pacific Dining Car downtown. And I was terrified of what he would think. And but he said, it's my book, it's your movie, and go with God, so to speak. But I stayed friends with him, and
did you like the movie?
He liked it, and then he didn't like it. He's kind of mercurial, and he's an interesting guy that way. He very much supported it, and kind of recently he sort of said he doesn't like it that much, which is his prerogative, really. So, but I'm still friends with him, and we actually pitched LA Confidential to he and I about 4 years ago. We came up with a whole thing set against when Patty Hearst came down, when the Symbionese Liberation Army came down to Los Angeles, and we got all the characters in there, and we pitched it, and we couldn't get it going. It was really depressing. Yeah.
Well, you shared just on talking about the pitch. You shared a story about it, how the network executive fell asleep during your pitch.
We pitched it a bunch of places. First of all, Warner Brothers passed, right? So Warner's made the movie, the original movie, are basically said, we don't make this kind of movie anymore. So that was fine. We had to get a note from them to go anywhere else. But we went to Netflix, and Ellroy does the pitching, and he's a performance artist, basically. When he talks about something, it's riveting. And he goes into this whole thing that he does, and it's literally performance artists, like a one-man show describing what the movie's going to be. And the executive fell asleep and just sort of nodded off. and basically woke up again, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't never take a pitch after lunch." And he's like, "Where were you?" And Ellroy was just kind of like, "Well, we're done.
Yeah, right.
I don't know where you are, but we're done.
So the reason why I brought it up is that the ridiculousness of pitching to execs, because I've done stuff like that. I went to a meeting once with a company called Bunim Murray. They produce a lot of reality stuff, which was what I was doing at the time. And they were eating their lunch. It was a husband and wife, and they were eating their lunch while they were talking to me. So sometimes I couldn't understand what they were saying because they're chewing. And I was there for a long time, but there were three exact moments where I thought the meeting was over. And I went to get up, like on What's My Line, I'm about to get up and, show that I'm the real person, and then they continued talking, and I was like, oh, the meeting's not over. Okay. And they continue eating, and, so I brought it up just because of the ridiculousness of what you had to go through, Yeah. Especially, a sequel to something like that. And you had the original actors too. I mean, it's crazy.
And we had them committed. It was Guy Pearce and Russell Crowe. Kevin Spacey, of course, dies in the first movie.
Yes.
And we had him replaced with Chad Bozeman, who I knew from 42. And his character, in the time we had set the story in that Symbionese Liberation Army in L.A., part of the story, Mayor Bradley had just been elected, and he played a young cop who worked for Mayor Bradley, and he was committed. And we had Chad, Russell, and Guy.
Wow.
And we couldn't even we couldn't get someone to just we'll take a flyer and tell you to write a script, and we'll see if we want to make it after that.
So I used to own movie theaters, and I had a big 10-screen art house in Palm Springs, and we were struggling. We were scrapping. And the movie that saved our asses was Mystic River. It did such big business. It's such an amazing movie. I'm a really big Dennis Lehane fan. I just finished his latest book, Small Mercies. I'm curious about this. Why is Boston? Because I think about the Dennis Lehane stories, movies like The Town and The Departed. Why is Boston such a great storytelling landscape?
I think it's because it's so parochial in a way. And it presents as this big kind of city on the East Coast, but it's about as big as a acorn, really. And it's all this sort of bad blood. It's like the Hatfields and McCoys, as a northeastern city. Everyone has a gripe and some axe to grind. And I always describe it as the people, if you're living in a tenement, and the people on the first floor hate the people on the second floor, who hate the people on the third floor. But they all band together because we all hate the people who live next door to us. But we as a block will band together because we hate the block over there. And we as a neighborhood will band together because we don't like that neighborhood. And we're all just, I'm making it sound grim, but it makes for great characters and great, nothing is ever over. The history is not, probably someone's still griping because Paul Revere on his ride ran his horse over their lawn, and they haven't forgotten it. Or their grandparents passed the gripe down to them. And, it's why they turn on their sports team so quick, what have you done for me lately? I don't care how many banners there are in Boston Garden. But it just makes for rich characters and interesting, kind of, I don't know if that answers the question, but
no, it totally does. Totally. Let me ask you a follow-up on Mystic River. So if I think of the movie Mystic River, there's one particular scene that sticks in my head. It is the scene that is from shot on high down at Sean Penn as he's in this gigantic crowd and just wailing when he finds out his daughter is the victim here.
When he says, "Is that my daughter in there?" Yeah.
So especially that shot down, is that something that you wrote? Did you write that as a point of view? Is that something Clint did? How did that work?
No, I just write that he's complete because the police are trying to hold him back because he's trying to get onto the crime scene, and he's got his brothers-in-law with him, the Savage brothers. Yeah. So there's a big kind of offensive line of guys trying to get into the crime scene. So all these police are holding them back, and that's how it's described. And Clint, knowing always, no one knows where the camera belongs better than Clint Eastwood does. And knowing that that's the story you're trying to tell, if you're down sort of at eye level, you're just going to kind of see him through the middle of all that. So, he realizes the camera needs to be up over it. So you see the mass of bodies and sort of everyone's back to us and Penn facing us. So we're focused on him. But that's all him.
The writing is just your writing is just amazing, and it's like there's no fat in your writing, right? And there's this one line that is so perfect, and it says so much with saying so little. When the boy who was dating the daughter who died, he's being questioned down at the police house, and he's asked, do you remember, what do you remember about your father? And he said he smelled like Schlitz and Dentine.
Right. Right. And
that's all you needed to know who this guy was.
Yeah. And that's the Dennis line. That's the Dennis Lehane line. So all I did was identify that's all you needed to say. Yeah. That's a Dennis line. But the funny thing is I had done a previous film for Clint called Blood Work.
Yeah. It's a really underrated movie.
Yeah, and he stars in it, and there's a scene where he crosses the street and he fires a shotgun at a car. And I thought to myself, when I was writing that scene, I thought, I have written a scene where Clint Eastwood is shooting at somebody. This is like the greatest writing moment of my life. He's gonna be running across Van Nuys Boulevard with a shotgun. Clint Eastwood. But I finished that script and it was really short. And that scripts are 120 pages, and that script was 94 pages. And I thought, but it was in there, and I couldn't think of what else to do with it. But I was nervous he was going to think I hadn't done my job, and I had to turn it in. And it's not, you don't email a script to Clint Eastwood. You go to his office and hand it to him. And the whole time I was like, he's going to just say, what is this? You didn't do your job. And I hand him the script. And as I hand it to him, he has it in the palm of his hand and he starts to heft it, like weighing it in his hand. Like immediately I'm busted. My biggest fear has just come true. And he looks at me and he says, how long is this? And speaking of economy and having only to say a few words to get a point across, and I said, it's 94 pages, wincing. And he goes, 94 pages? He goes, it's already the best script I ever read in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
So a good lesson to learn about, economy and things like that.
It's interesting you say that because I wrote sitcoms for years. And I remember when I was writing spec scripts, I was told that if it's not the right amount of pages, they won't even read it. Like they'll go to the back and they'll look at the number on the last page. If it's 40 something, no, too long. And if it's 25, no, too short, they won't even read it.
Right. So yeah, the shorter the better for him.
So I'm a really big Dodgers fan. I also do a show every day on ESPN here in LA. And we have referenced the movie 42 so many times on our show. It is such an unbelievably powerful film that captures Jackie Robinson and what he went through. You wrote and directed that movie. Was that based on something, or was that an original screenplay?
Well, it's original in that it's not based on a book, but it's based on his life.
On his life, yeah.
And I didn't invent anything in that. I mean, as far as even the at-bats in the movie are all real at-bats that he had. And
that Philadelphia manager was really an a-hole.
Oh, yeah. It was worse than, in real life, it was worse than what we showed.
Who played the manager? It was
Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk, yeah, boy, he was a jerk.
Who I had in Knight's Tale. That's how I know Alan. He's the nutty guy from Knight's Tale. But the great resource I had was Mrs. Robinson. And
what a wonderful woman, Rachel.
Yeah.
I got the chance to meet her and interview her. She is such an elegant lady.
Yeah, and she was kind of every step of the way on the script. I would show it to her, and she had notes and things like that. So she was invaluable. She, talked to Chadwick about her husband a lot, and Ralph Branca was the other great resource because he was the only person I had access to who was on that team. Yeah, and he was a pallbearer at Robinson's funeral, so you knew they were friends,
right?
And he was very, very helpful.
And Ralph Branca, of course, best known, for giving up the shot heard around the world.
When I met him, he had an insurance agency in Rye, New York, and I went and talked to him. And I asked him all these questions about Robinson. And at the end, he looked at me and he goes, okay, so is there anything else you want to ask me? And I knew he meant that. And I said, no, Mr. Branca, there's nothing else I want to ask you. And he was like, oh, okay, great. Great. But a great guy. Great guy. And
you worked with Chadwick Bozeman, who was like a comet, gone so soon, but what a legacy from Jackie Robinson to Thurgood Marshall to the Black Panther. What? Yeah. For you, what made him? And you obviously had worked with him. What was he like? What made him such a special guy as an actor?
Well, he hadn't he didn't have a lot of screen time as a performer on film. He had done a lot of plays and small plays, and was a director himself. He had directed. I think that was his major at Howard University was theater directing. But he was ready. He was ready, and he had prepared himself. He looks younger than he is in the movie than he is in real life. When we were shooting, he was 35 or 36 years old, and he's like Robinson in a way that he was ready for the moment should it arrive, and not knowing if it ever would arrive, to be a leading man in a film, which is a strange thing because he doesn't hardly have any parts at all, but that's how he saw himself. And that's what he was prepared for. And we just had to sort of take the slates off, but I didn't have to direct him. He knew what to do. He knew how to play it. And he was ready for the moment. And the moment came one day, and he grabbed it by the throat, and that was it.
Yeah.
Had he played baseball? I always wonder, some actors, are amazing athletes. So was it like spring training for him? I mean, he played Little League baseball, but he was a basketball player, and had played a lot of point guard, and had played a lot of basketball, but actually had turned down some basketball scholarships to go to Howard for theater, which was what he loved. And so he hadn't played baseball since he was 10 or 11. And he had very long fingers. So great for a basketball, but for a baseball, his hand just about wrapped. It was like holding a walnut in a way. So he had to, he had to sort of throw a certain way to release the ball a certain way to control it. But we got some, I'm drawing a blank on his name. He was the basketball coach at Ventura College, came and worked with Chad 3 days a week and for months before we started. And we had a former Yankee trainer who came and worked with him and just got him into shape so you'd buy what you were seeing on screen.
Such a great movie. Movie. Listen, Brian, this has been great, man. Amazing career. It's fun to look through it all with you. Thanks a lot for sharing some of it with us.
All right. No, great. Thanks for having me.
And Brian's new movie is Finest Kind. It begins streaming on Paramount Plus on December the 15th. Brian, thanks a lot for coming on.
All right. Thank you both.
There you have it. There's Brian Helgeland. The movie is really, really good. It is on Paramount Plus. You're going to like it. And what a career, man.
Oh my God.
Seriously, that guy. I mean, just LA Confidential alone.
I know. I mean, I didn't know that he had written all these things, and I'd seen almost everything that he's written, and completely forgot that it was him.
Yeah,
so.
No, he is a brilliant writer, and of course, Kat, I always like to know where people keep their Oscars, but I think it's so cheesy to ask. You think it's cheesy to ask?
It depends who it is.
Do you think Brian would have told us?
Oh, he totally would have told us.
Would he? I should ask.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think it is?
Well, I know for me, it'd be hood ornament.
It would be a hood ornament.
Hood ornament. I would be driving around. My Oscar would be right on the hood, so everybody knew right away.
It'll be there for less than a day. Who took my Oscar?
Okay, so I slept with an Oscar winner once. Don't want to say who it is at all.
Do I want to say who it is?
No, I don't want to say who it is.
Well, you'll tell me off the air.
But the Oscar was on a nightstand next to the bed.
Was it an actor, writer, or?
No further clues.
Oh, God.
No further clues.
Was it a one-night stand?
Yeah. No, it wasn't. It went on for weeks. Went on for weeks.
A many-night stand.
Those were the days when weeks was like a long relationship for me.
Oh,
you know how
God.
I was. Weeks I was with him.
When I was in junior high school, I dated a kid for like a day.
A day, yes. Were you going together?
For a day.
That was
I was his girlfriend for a day.
Do you remember, like, I'm going with somebody?
Oh, yeah. Well, also, I remember when I went to summer camp, I was, from 9 to 15.
Yeah.
So I had a boyfriend when I was like 10, in summer camp. And he had a fedora that he wore all the time.
Of course he did.
So he gave me his fedora. So that
Ooh.
was like, that took the place of like an ID bracelet.
Yeah.
Is that like a big deal when you were a kid? Like guys would give a girl their ID bracelet. And that meant that you
What
were
is an
going
ID
steady.
bracelet?
It's that chain. It's like a link bracelet. And then it has a bar on the front. And it has their name on it.
And were you all wearing these? Because I've never heard of these.
Girls didn't wear them. Boys wore them.
Oh, okay.
And they were called ID bracelets.
When I was at Bowling Green in the fraternity, we would, you'd get pinned. That was the thing. You'd exchange a pin. First you lavaliered and you gave them something for a lavalier. And then you gave them a pin and that meant you're serious. And then all my friends got engaged too. I thank God I avoided that.
Well, as a woman, you can always tell if a guy liked you, like if you had like what you appear to be like a one-night stand or whatever.
Yes.
You can always tell by the t-shirt he gave you to go home with the next day.
Really?
If it was a nice t-shirt, like a t-shirt that he really liked,
right,
and he gave it to you to wear,
he wants it back.
He wants it back.
Yeah. And if you're wearing a ratty,
if you have a ripped up, like, something where he went like this.
Yeah, right. You're not coming back.
There's no way there's a second date.
All right, there you have it. That's a fun show. Fun show today. Thanks to everybody who is watching. Thanks to everybody who is listening. Don't forget, you should subscribe to our YouTube channel. One of these shows comes out all the time. You can see the pictures that go along with the words on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate all you guys. If you leave us a comment leave us a 5-star review on Apple. Leave us, go ahead and write why you like the show. Same thing on YouTube, and send us an email afterwards. We will send you a Culture Pop Podcast t-shirt. And Sue, I still have one with your name on it. I got to drop this thing in the mail to you. It's a nice hoodie.
I know, and it's hoodie weather now.
It's hoodie weather. I'll get it in the mail this week. I promise. Okay. I promise. And by the way, if you do make a post or a comment, a review, you can email us maceandsue@gmail.com with your address and all that stuff, and we will send you out a Culture Pop Podcast t-shirt. Sue, thank you very much, and we will see everybody next time on the Culture Pop Podcast.